Hi, everyone. This is a recorded session of the. Hi, everyone. This is a recording of a previous session held during our Professional Development Day on Friday, April 17th. And in that session, we took a look at using Google Forms to create assessment. Hello, everyone. This is a recording of a session that we had. Hi, everyone. This is a recording of a session that we had done on Friday, April 17th, as part of our Professional Learning Day in Sturgeon Public Schools. And in the session, we took a look at how to use Google Forms to create assessments for students. You will notice on the screen that there is a bit.ly link to the slides. I will keep that bit.ly link live. There are some resources and some additional links and places to go and things to look at. So I will keep that link live if you are ever interested to pop into this series of slides for more information. So in our time together, we are just going to take a look at how to build an assessment in Google Forms. Now, to be clear, this is an introductory session. We're not doing a huge deep dive into Google Forms or really complicated strategies. This is simply getting the lay of the land. How do I create one? How do I give it to my students? What does it look like? So really is kind of that basic level of understanding in Google Forms. But because of the nature of Google Forms, I would not say that this is specific to any particular grade level or any particular content area. It is an application that you can use really for any group of students. And there's flexibility built in that you can design exactly what you need to design. And I'll even give you some additional suggestions to make it engaging for those as they are doing some of these things. So like I said, in our time together, we will take a look at assessment strategies and some of those how-to steps and practicing creating in forms. So we will go ahead and look at making one. We'll figure out how do we review the results? Like how do I look at what the kids have completed and submitted? And then we'll think about what could some of the uses be? What could some of the strategies be that isn't just similar to a traditional quiz or a test? So I want to consider kind of coming at this from two different places because while most of our teachers in Sturgeon Public do use Google Classroom, some don't. And in fact, I would say that Google Forms is an application that can be used even outside of teaching and learning. It can be used as a data collection strategy. So there will be some staff and some users that do not use it out of Google Classroom. And so I'm going to actually approach it from both, or at least explain how to get there from both. If you are not accessing Google Forms from Google Classroom, then there are two ways to create a new form. One is to go into your Google Drive, click New, then More, and then you will find Forms right there. An alternative, and we'll go back there in a second, is to open up a new tab and simply type in forms.google.com/create. Now, here's your fun tip for the day. Did you know that anytime that you type in the application name and then put create afterwards, that it will in fact, it's your kind of really quick way to open a blank something. So if you want a blank Google Doc, then it's docs.google.com/create. If it is a blank Google slide, then it's slides.google.com/create. And same with forms, same with sites, same with drawings. So just a quick for you. If you ever need to get really quickly to a blank Google Doc, then it's docs.google.com/create, and it will open a blank one for you and store it right within your Google Drive. So, quick tip. Okay, so there's that way. And then the other way is, so those are the two ways that you could do it if you're not working within Google Classroom. But if you are working in Google Classroom, then you're going to go to create and then quiz assignment. Now, just to clarify any confusion, could you go assignment and then attach a Google form that you've created in the past? Yes, you can. You totally can. But this new added feature of quiz assignment has a few benefits and that I didn't quite understand myself until just recently. And largely the benefits have to do with just looking at the results afterwards and just kind of, again, that hand in, hand out, that exchange back and forth of information that Google Classroom is so good at. So those would be the two ways, depending on whether you use Google Classroom or not. But before we get into forms, we need to have a quick pause moment. We need to have a stop. And here's why. When we get into forms, you will notice that some of the vocabulary and some of the things in the terms that you see are going to default, or it even does to me, it defaults our thinking into, oh, I can create a quiz. I can create an exam. I can totally take my hard copy exam that I would have given my students in the past, I'll just digitize it and I'll give it to them. And yes, you can. But I just want to encourage you to pause, because because you see that the terms are the same, and just because you see that that possibility is there, that does not necessarily mean it is the best practice to just digitize the exams we've done in the past. So I am going to provide some suggestions, some alternatives. Did you think of using Google Forms for this? Could you use it in this way? Could you use it in this way? So that we're not just looking at it as a test making tool, but in fact it is bigger than that. And there are some additional ways that we can use it that are not as forefront as, oh, I can make a multiple choice test. Okay? So yes, we will look at creating one. Yes, you will see terms in there that are very common in a test making environment, even a test taking environment. But I want to challenge you to think bigger, that this is not only what this is, it can in fact be more, and push yourself to explore the more, because there is more that you can do with Google Forms. There's my philosophical piece for this. But before we go to ideas, let's go and build. Okay, so I'm going to abandon these slides and I'm going to pop into my Google Classroom and I'm going to start building. Okay, so to create a brand new Google form, I'm going to create quiz assignment. Move this out of the way. I'm going to put in the title. Okay, I can put in my instructions. You will notice it is a blank quiz. That will change. I typically have grade importing toggled on. And there's some additional features I can play with, but I'm not going to play with those until I am done building my quiz. So from here, I'm just going to launch Google Forms right from here. And it is going to open a blank Google form. Let's pop this here. Work for now. Okay, I'm going to take you on a tour. We're going to do a tour across the top and then we will do a tour going down. All right. So first and foremost, I'm going to change the title of this because otherwise it just gets a little bit confusing. Okay. And here is now it is going to automatically save just like all Google applications do. And now we're going to kind of head across the top. So first things first, we're going to just go and take a look. You can call it a triple dot. I've heard it called a snowman or a traffic light, but we're just going to pop over to that triple dot and we're going to take a look. And there are some options that you can choose. There is a menu. And so if you are working on a common activity with a teacher colleague or another staff member, then by all means you can click Add Collaborator, and that will invite them into this Google form, and you can be collaborating together and working on designing it together. Okay. You can certainly print it and make copies and so on, but just know that there are some additional, oh, and then preferences at the bottom here is if you just changing some of the default settings. So if I open it, anytime I create a new form, I automatically want to collect email addresses. I automatically want the questions required, and I automatically want to default to a point value of 1. Okay, so you can change some of those. The send button we will play with and talk about towards the end. But you also notice there's another settings here. So I can click on the settings here, and these are the settings specifically for this form. Okay? And I'll take you through each one. So first things first, I do, if I know who this is going to, and I know it's an activity for my students, I'm going to select that yes, I do want to collect email addresses for all my students or for anybody who completes the activity. And the reason is because then I don't have to A, put in a field for a name, and B, they can't lie to me either. So it's just really simple that it'll automatically collect their email addresses, and then I know who it is. It can restrict to users in the domain, and so anybody that would try to reach this form that isn't logged into the Sturgeon EDU domain will not have access to it. I can identify how many responses, so I'm going to say I'm going to limit it to 1 response, so a student cannot go back and respond again. And I can also limit and say I want them to be able to edit after submit, and I want them to be able to see the summary charts. But in this case, I might say no. Then from the presentation side, actually, I'm going to go to quizzes first, and then I'll come back. I am, just for interest's sake, I am going to make this a quiz. And by quiz, I mean that I want it to auto-grade it. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a traditional quiz, a summative assessment. It is simply that I want to assign point values, and then I'm going to have Google Forms automatically review the responses, and so that I'm not having to manually go in and do it. Okay. Now, some of you are going to take a look at this and get awfully excited. Can I lock the kids in their tab and in their window so they can't open the internet and search for responses? And yeah, there is that feature. There is locked mode on Chromebooks. However, this locked mode only works if a student is using a Chromebook that has been purchased and set up by Sturgeon Public. So in a BYOD scenario, if a student has their own Chromebook or in the distance learning model where students are using any device that they have, this locked mode. Okay. So I'm not going to turn that on. Now, the other thing is I can release the grade immediately after each submission. I'm going to say later after manual review. I always like to look at them first before the kids have a chance to see. And then I'm going to select what I want them to be able to see. So I want them to see their missed questions, the correct answers, and the point values, some of those, none of those. So in this case, I'll just say, yeah, you can see all of it. Okay. Then lastly, under presentation, there are a few additional risk options. So if the activity or the assessment will have multiple sections to it, so almost like multiple pages, then you can show a progress bar, and that will show how far along the students are. We've seen a progress bar like that in kind of My School Survey and things like that. You can also shuffle the question order, and so that is where the questions, so that for each student, the student writes or answers the same questions, but the questions may not be in the same order for each student. Okay, so we're just shuffling the order of the questions around. And then we can change the confirmation message. So, great work. I will respond with any feedback shortly. Great. So a couple of changes have been made to my form already based on the settings. First of all, the form is saying that it is automatically collecting email addresses, and then I can go in and change the settings. And if I were to go to the preview icon and see what this looks like from a student view, then here we go. It says your email address will be recorded when you submit. Okay, so I don't even need a place for students to put in their name. All right. Now, you can do a little bit of customizing with the theme. So if you get tired of the purple, then you can certainly change it. You can change the color. You can change the header, so you can pick an image. So if it's a quiz on seasons, then maybe you can find an image here that would be appropriate. There are specific photos we'll just pull from your Google Drive, but you can customize it a little bit. Not too much, of course, because otherwise, for some reason, we just get more distracted by customizing than we do sometimes with the content. So it is there. You can do a little bit of work with it, but not too much. Okay. So the last two things I will show you across the top are add-ons. Add-ons are like extensions are, so extensions are to your Chrome browser, add-ons are to Google applications. And so an add-on is kind of like an extension over top of an application. You can get add-ons for Google Docs, for Google Slides, for Sheets, and you can do the same for forms as well. There have been a couple of add-ons that have been set up for the sturgeon domain. The one that teachers are using to limit or kind of close the time as to how kind of to when the students have access to the form is form limiter. Let me make that more clear. So if you want students to only have access up to a certain time, then you would use the form limiter add-on, and it will add that restriction. Okay. If you are curious about any of these forms, all you have to do is go to the G Suite Marketplace, and it will give you some background information on each. Now, I will talk about the preview button, but it basically just gives you a quick student view or a user view of what the Google form looks like at any point in time. But as a caution, I would strongly encourage you that as you are designing and building your Google Forms, that before you send it, before you share it or assign it in Google Classroom, that you use that preview to ensure that it is exactly the way that you want it to be. Because there are sometimes in this edit side of the form that you won't catch some errors that you would otherwise in the preview. Okay. So that is some of those features across the top, and now we're going to take a look at the form itself. All right. I'm going to so you'll notice at the top you can have a title and put in a form description. So answer questions. It could be different than that, but nonetheless, there are some features there. And in terms of what to add to this Google form, that menu is just sitting on the side here. Okay. The top one, just that little plus button, is to add a question. We will come back to that one. If you want to import questions, in other words, in Google Classroom, you create a brand new quiz, but you may have used this, or you may have created a similar quiz in the past, and you just want to pull those questions. You do not have to go through the motion of copying and pasting. Okay. You can simply just import the questions. And so if there are questions that I have used in the past that I want in this particular activity, I'm just going to click on this icon. It's going to open up all my forms specifically. I'm going to go identify the questions that I want. And then from there, I can select all or just the individual ones that I want to import. Once I've done that, I can click the import questions and they will populate my form. Okay. The one below is to add a title and a description. So think of the activities where there are different sections within the assessment. So there might be all these questions have to do with this concept, these questions have to do with this concept. So I could go ahead and add a title and say that this has to do with Unit 1. Questions 1 through 10 all connect to Unit 1 concepts. So it's just an organization note tool to kind of break it down as you need to. Now, you will notice that if you make a mistake and you've put it in the wrong spot, that you can move it around. So you see how there's just this dots at the top of the item. And as soon as I put my mouse over top of that, then I have that kind of crosshairs, which allows me to select it and drag it. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to basically drag it where I want. So I can manipulate it and move it down, or I can move it up. In this case, I'll just leave it there, but there is that drag and drop feature. Okay. Now, anytime that there's that triple dot, there are some additional features. You'll see that if you need to, you can duplicate a question or an item, or you can just delete it all together. All right. So that is import questions, add title and description. You can add a section. So this is what I was talking about, where if you are going to use that progress bar, so it's almost like a page. You've got a series of questions and then another page with a series of questions. So if your activity or your assessment has a number of is quite lengthy, then instead of scrolling, it might be better to break it up into a series of sections. Okay, and so you just click on add section to do that. The other two items that you can include are an image and a video. So, and here's where we can start to think of, oh, we could use Google Forms in that way. Yeah, you can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click add an image. And I'm going to do, because I don't have one in mind necessarily, so I'm just going to do a quick Google image search. And I'm going to search for penguins. Okay. So perhaps my students and I are studying penguins, and particularly we're studying habitats. So I'm going to find an image. This one looks really good. I'm going to click insert. Okay. And there is an option to put a title there. And what I'm going to do is just identify, use the image below to answer the next 3 questions. Okay. And there's some additional, I can do some tweaking with changing the picture or with alignment and things like that, but I typically don't do too much. And then I can add some questions below. And just like that, before I go into adding the questions, I can also, I'm just going to delete this one actually. I can also add a video. So you'll notice that I can pull in the URL of a video. So I may have created one using Screencastify and it's stored in my Google Drive. So I would just grab the Google Drive link, or I can actually search YouTube. See what it's got for me. That's 5 minutes. That looks pretty good to me. And again, same thing. It gives me just a place to put a title, and I might say, use the video below to answer the next question. So, as before we go any further, I want you to consider that this doesn't have to be, well, yes, absolutely. As you think of biology and science and weather cycle, like water cycles and concepts that really require images and diagrams, political cartoons, certainly. Could you pull those in and ask questions about them? Yeah, you could. But it could also even just be as simple as kind of like a completion activity. So you're teaching the students a new concept, and you're not really aiming to have them complete an assessment. It's not an exam, it's not a quiz, but it's just, I want you to complete an activity. So I'm going to pull in a video, and then here are some comprehension questions below it to see if you understood it. It could also be, it could even just be reading comprehension period. So you could capture like a screenshot of a poem instead of having to retype it out, get a screenshot of a poem, pull that in as an image, and then you could have questions below. It could be image analysis. Like there are actually a number of different things that you can do. Describe, right? Like just describe what you see in the picture. This picture makes me think of what? It could be a reflective activity. So again, there are a number of different ways that you can use forms. It does not have to be a traditional um, summative task. Okay, I'm just going to pop that into the middle. And now I'm going to go ahead and start adding some questions. So like I said, you can add images, you can add video as different sources to embed right within your form. But now we've taken a look at all these ones. Now we're going to start adding some questions. So you'll notice that when you open or add a new question, it will default to multiple choice. And if I click on that, you'll see that you've got actually quite a few options. Short answer, paragraph, so that's your long answer. Multiple choice. Check boxes is if you want more than one answer. A drop down is essentially a multiple choice, but I use drop down when I have more than 4 choices, so it doesn't start to take up a lot of real estate on the screen. I will talk about file upload in a moment. Linear scale is your Likert scale. And then you've got a few additional options towards the bottom. I use these very rarely, but I can certainly see that date and time might be helpful if you're even just gathering information, almost like a survey tool. That could be helpful. But I'm going to start with multiple choice. And pop in a quick question. Okay. And then I will just put in some responses. So this looks like the jungle. And to toggle to the next line, just use your arrow keys. So I just go up and down, and that's the easiest. So desert, this is mountain, and this is the Now, if I want Google Forms to do some of the work for me, then I'm going to add an answer key. So I'm going to click answer key. I do want it worth 1 point, and I'm going to select the correct answer and then click done. Okay. And then I do have it defaulted to make this a required question. And by required, the students cannot click submit. They have put in a response for each of the questions. Again, there's that triple dot, so I can see that there's a few additional options. This shuffle option order means that these 4 options would be shuffled. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and add another question. Now I could either click on this copy or duplicate to get another one, but I actually want to change the question type so it doesn't make too much of a difference. Okay. Identify the what food. And because I know I want to make it a checkbox, I'm just going to add a quick description, check all that apply. I'm going to say option 1, seal, option 2, fish, option 3, shrimp, option 4, seagulls, 5, lichen, option 6, So there are a few options, and then the students would just have to identify them. I do want an answer key. You can decide how many points this is going to be worth. I'm just going to say it's worth 1, and they eat fish and shrimp. Done. So there we go. All right, it's required. I'm good to go. Now, I am going to add one more question. And now I'm going to point out a few things to you. So first of all, you will see that beside the question prompt that there is an image icon. So I could, for one question only, I could put in an image to go along with the question. And you will also notice that for each of the options, there is also that question or that image icon that appears. So actually, I could have a question and have the options be images. So it could be, identify which of the images below reflects autumn, right? And so it is less text-based and you're starting to use images. Okay, now I'll show you quickly how to do that. Which part of the penguin is we're reaching here, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add an image, and I'm going to do a Google image search, penguin beak. Okay, so I would like a little bit more close up, but we'll take what we can get. So that's pretty close. Insert. And so I would just go ahead and do that for the other 4 options. Okay, we'll add one more just for reference, just so that we can see Google image search, penguin foot. And oh, there's a good one, insert. Okay, and then of course I'm going to go to my answer key. I'm going to identify the correct answer and then click done. Okay. Now, I could very easily here, I've got this question here, I could add another, and I could make it a paragraph response. Identify 3 things that make it difficult for a penguin to survive. And then I would be expecting them to put in a long answer text. Now I'm going to change the answer. I'm not going to put in an answer key because I know as a teacher I do need to look at this one, but I am going to change how many points it's worth just so the students are aware. And it's required, and then off I go. Now you can, when you create a short answer, you can put in the answer key answers, but you do have to factor in, like especially if it's a vocabulary term or something like that, you really do have to factor in spelling, capitalization, and things like that. And you're almost trying to think of all the ways that kids could misspell it or miswrite it, but still get it correct. Or you just say that spelling counts. Whether that's the best assessment practice, but so you just have to factor that in if you do want it to be scored by the form. So I don't know that I would lean towards using the form, using the answer key for short answer or paragraph, but it is available that you can. All right, so this is my form. As I mentioned, there are different ways that we could do this. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention. So before I totally forget, is you will see that the one thing we didn't talk about is this file upload. So in a Google form, you now have the ability to upload a file. It's like a submission right within the Google form. Okay? So this can be used in a number of different ways. This could be, we just used it as a way to submit image files, right? We're collecting photos for a slideshow, and so it's a way to very quickly and easily for people to provide images for a slideshow. It could be that, again, instead of dealing with formatting and printing and uploading and downloading and attachments, that it's as simple as sometimes just taking a picture and uploading it right within a form. But I would suggest that sometimes this can be really helpful for math and science, that you want the ease of a form because it can auto grade, but you still want the benefit of being able to see a student's work. And so what you could do specifically for math and science teachers is that you could create a question where the kids have to upload their work. So they have a worksheet, they have a hard copy, a task that they need to complete. And I only want them to upload one file. That's all they need to do. I'm going to say that the only thing that they can attach is, no, I don't want to, they could attach either an image or a PDF. That's all I'm going to say. The rest, they don't. I don't need them to provide audio. It doesn't need to be a video. So I could provide some limitations, and I can provide some limitations on the file size. But this could be where upload image here, because then you actually have their work. And so when you have to provide feedback or kind of troubleshoot where the error was made, you still have evidence of that. But then you could set it up. So if there were 10 questions on the activity that you asked the students to complete, then you can put in 10 questions in your form. So, add your question, and then you could make it, you could still be multiple choice, or it could be short answer and just it's marked correctly. But then if you ask them to upload the file, then you still, again, have evidence of the work, right? They're kind of solving the problem and the steps that they needed to complete. So that's another way to kind of tackle that, those math and science stuff. Okay, so this is my form. I'm all done with it. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this one. And now remember what I said, we want to ensure that we take a look at preview to catch any errors that we might have made. So it's going to open a quick preview quiz of what the students would see. So it says, yep, it's my name, answer the questions, unit 1, and then here are the questions. So again, it formats it really nicely here. I've popped it in the middle. The kids would just open it. There's my long answer there. There's my add file. And if I clicked on add file, it would ask me to upload. It also is really easy to do this add file from a phone even too, if you look at the form through on your phone. So otherwise it looks pretty good. Okay, so if I am not using Google Classroom, then I'm going to go into this send button and I'm going to click on the link icon, and then I can either copy this long link, so copy here, or I can click on this little box to shorten it, and I could copy this one. Doesn't matter. It makes no difference. And then I'm going to share that link to whoever needs access to the form. Now, if I am not, or pardon me, if I am in Google Classroom, then I'm going to go back to Google Classroom. Okay. I'm going to click assign or make changes to whatever settings I need to here, and then click assign, and it's going to assign this to my students. You will notice it still says blank quiz, but if I were to go into it again, you'll notice it's been adjusted. Now I'm going to pop into student view for a moment, just so that I can see what this looks like. There's that webinar quiz. So I'm going to go in and open the quiz. And then I'm just going to go ahead and choose fish, shrimp. I'm going to say like in here. And add a file. I maybe shouldn't have done this, but okay. I'll just go to my drive just for the sake of adding something. So we'll do this. Actually, no, I'm going to go back because here's an example of exactly what I was talking about. So this is just, that's not what I wanted. Let's try that again. Here's an example. So here's that math worksheet, and I'm just going to upload it right within. So now I'm going to click submit. I will see, here's that feedback, great work. I will respond with any feedback shortly. And now this open assignment just takes me back to Google Classroom. And I will notice in Google Classroom that it now says that my work has been turned in. So it automatically does that for me. Now I'm going to go back to the student, or pardon me, the teacher view. I'm going to see that one has been turned in. And so to access the responses, you actually have to go back into the form. Okay. Now, at first it looks like, whoa, but wait a minute, this is the student view. And you're right, but you'll notice bottom right-hand corner, there's a little edit. And so I'm going to pop in there and I'm going to take a look at the back side of that form again. And so here's that edit view, which is exactly what we need. But now the part we're going to take a look at is where it says responses. Just going to wait for it to load. And I should see, and in fact, there is a number 1 beside it, and that tells me that I have 1 response on my form. Now, to take a look at the responses, there are a number of ways to do it. I can think almost like a Scantron strategy. So I can take a look at very holistically, where it gives me a summary of it all. Okay, question by question with some overall insights. I can go question by question, where it provides the response, all the responses for that one question, and I can go individual to individual. This is where I lean towards individual, because then I can go through and provide any feedback that might be necessary. So I see this one is correct, this one is incorrect. I might add some individual feedback and suggest not working. And you'll even notice here, I could provide a link or a video. So if the student might need some additional help or support, I could add a video showing them, watch this video and it will show you exactly what penguins eat. Or here's a website that you can read through that tells you exactly what the penguin's diet is. Okay. I could add some more and say, excellent observation. And here, oh, that's not what I want. Not individual feedback I want to add, but I do at least want to give them 1 out of 3. And same thing here. I'm going to say that this is also 1 out of 3. Now I should have changed this when I designed the form, and I should have made this out of 0, that they don't actually get a point whether it is attached or not, but I'll leave that up to you. And now that I have provided that feedback, I can click save. Okay. And I am going to, and just a note, for those of you that are not in a Google Classroom context, and at some point you want to stop accepting responses, the form is no longer live, then just turn this off and it will be closed. Okay. All right, so now that I am done, I can click release score so that the student receives their score. Click send email release. And the other thing that I want to do is, after I've reviewed all the forms, I'm going to click return. So it's kind of that traditional exchange in a physical classroom. Student hands something in, the teacher reviews it, and then the teacher hands it back so that the student work can be in the student's possession. So I'm going to click return. And if I wanted to, I could provide a private comment to that kiddo, but I'm not going to now. And now, let me just pop here. Now, if I just do a quick refresh, I will notice that the work has been returned to me. So I can go, no, that's not quite what I want. It says, let's do a quick refresh again. Okay, so it's been returned to the student. Oh, let's do this first. Okay, has been returned. So let's just double check that it is. There it is. I don't know what that was, but nonetheless. So I can now see that my work, so I'm in the student view. I can now see that it's been returned to me. So I'm going to click on that webinar quiz. And I can go through, I can see I got 4 out of 7, and I can go through the questions that I got correct and incorrect, and even see the individual feedback provided to me. And then because it's in my kind of my ownership now, I can review and go back into this at any point. So and also once you return, you'll also notice from the teacher side, it does take a few moments. I've noticed that this is not a quick turnaround, but once you release the scores and so you import the scores into Google Classroom and then release it and to return it back to the student, then you can also go back into it again just to kind of see historically. All right. So that in our time together has basically been just an overview of Google Forms, how to use it, how to build in it, and just a couple of suggestions on what to create with it. And here are a few more. So you could create a survey for students, but also think your math curriculum and when students are collecting their own data and when they have to create charts and graphs. And the great thing about Google Forms now is that when you review data and you saw those charts, you can actually pull those out and paste them into other locations. So students could create forms and use them as survey tools. It could be a pre-lesson check-in. It could be an exit ticket, a self-reflection, so and a self-evaluation at the end of a unit or at the end of a project. It could even be a reading record. So when you are wanting students to record the books that they've read, it could be here's the book, here's kind of what it was about, here's what I would rate it, here's what the reading level was. It could very much be a quiz. It could be practice questions or a review. Again, it could be reading comprehension. This is a little bit more of an advanced skill, but it could be very much a choose your own adventure. Think of those old choose your own adventure books. And you can start to play with pathways in Google Forms. That would be more of an intermediate or an advanced level understanding. And even file submission. Okay, but before I let you go, I do want to point you again just in a few directions to help you keep moving along with some of the work that you are already doing. Keep in mind that Ed Services has built that continue learning website where there are resources for teachers, for students, and for parents. But certainly that teachers tab is full of guides, of suggestions, and then even it's a launch point to some other resources that could be helpful. There is the Learning Together YouTube channel. So if you navigate there, you will notice that there are a series of playlists. There is a playlist for teachers, for parents, for students, and then all of the recorded sessions are in their own playlist. And then I just want to direct you to two of our close neighbor friends, Black Gold and Edmonton Catholic, have developed some really brilliant Google specific resources and templates that really, once you open them, you can create a copy and use for yourself. Now, if you have any questions along the way when you were creating these Google Forms, using them with your students, or in fact, your students are creating them and using them with each other, please feel free to reach out. I am available by email and by phone. I am happy to provide support and just troubleshoot with you as we are really in this new learning context together. But in the meantime, you are doing so well. Thank you for all your hard work. Keep it up, and I hope you have a really great day.